So that new sex education season 3 is finally done, and I've got a lot to say about it. And quickly before we start, this video obviously has spoilers. I can't talk about the show without talking about spoilers, so yeah. So off the bat, I'm just going to say that this season was significantly worse than the last ones, but I'm just going to start with what I liked about it first. So, first of all, I'm just going to say that I really enjoyed how they gave minor characters little arcs. I definitely think the best example of this was Mr. Groff, who actually gets something to do in this season for once, and we actually learn about his character more. But ultimately, you know, for the season which has the most change on our characters, nothing really happened. You know, for a show which is nearly solely built upon character work and character development, this new season really didn't finish many arcs effectively or at all. You know, the big surprise, or what was supposed to be the big surprise of the first episode, was that Otis is now going out with Ruby. But after the halfway point of the show, Ruby just leaves, leaving literally all of the character work between her and Otis unfinished, empty, forgotten. It's pointless. You've just wasted my time. You have this whole hullabaloo of how Ruby never trusts anyone, like Maeve in the first season. And she introduces Otis to her dad. But then she just leaves. We never see her. We see her once, and she just fights the principal in a pointless scene which doesn't serve anything to the plot. That's not how you write a show. I'm sorry, but you can't just introduce and character build a whole character who we had previous assumptions about 2 seasons ago. You can't just build on her character for half of a season and then forget about her the other half. And I know you guys are going to say, oh, it's because she broke up with Otis, so she's no longer valuable to the plot. But if you haven't seen by now, this show does not revolve around one character, let alone Otis. This whole new season, it revolved around Eric and his relationships. And this is where I get to my most hated character, the most pointless, the most boring character in this entire show. Cal. Cal does nothing for the plot. She literally just gives people drugs and says, I'm not wearing a skirt for 8 episodes. You know, this season tries to do so much. We try and talk about queer relationships, we try and talk about forgiveness, we're trying to talk about infertility, we try and talk about regret, and we try and talk about adult ignorance. But here's Cal just getting people stoned and starting arcs which aren't even finished, or never even look to be finished in the future. You know, there are so many better ways to do what they wanted to do with Cal in other characters. And introducing this new person who really doesn't need to be there only takes time away from other characters who really needed to be built upon. I'd have loved to see Adam and his father having more bonding moments, because they clearly had a similar childhood or relationship with their father. But no, I have to watch Cal and Jackson getting high for half an hour, because why not? And ultimately, I think that this all just boils down to the show becoming way more sitcom-y than the previous 2 seasons. The theme of the previous 2 seasons, and ultimately the point of the show, was to explore the diversity in teens nowadays. And I think this was really well represented through the therapy sessions that all of these different minorities would have with either Otis or his mum. But with this new season, there is no therapy. There is only the Sex King, which is a name I've heard associated with myself many a time. Talking about some other characters, Maeve. She really didn't get anything to do this season compared to other seasons. She had little character change. She just really walks around after people in this season. And Amy, all she learns is that all vulvas are different, and then she starts making cakes for the rest of the season. Because remember guys, God forbid we didn't include Cal in the show, because we never had a potentially rebellious, potentially LGBTQ or LGBTQ character in the show before. Nope. Can't think of one. Oh, and we can't forget about Eric. Eric definitely has an arc in the show, and he definitely has the most amount of screen time of all the original characters. Eric is essentially only a level 1 crook at queer relationships, but he's forced into one where he's supposed to know everything, and he just can't cope like Raheem did. And I think that was quite an interesting subplot. But at the end of the season, I just came out of it not really caring about what happens next. Ultimately, I think that they could literally just leave the show as it is now, never return to it again, and no one will complain. And guys, I obviously know that season 4 is coming. If this whole season 3 was just 5 men shoveling cow poo for 8 hours straight, they'd still make a season 4. But when you have some of your audience thinking, boy, I think next season should be the end of it, to a show where there shouldn't be a definitive ending, or there isn't a definitive ending, you know that your show's slightly coming off track a bit. But ultimately, I think this new season was quite disappointing, especially due to the fact of how built up the ending of the last season was, to just be washed away in, what, 1 to 3 minutes of dialogue. So ultimately, I'm just going to give this season a 4 out of 10. It tries to do a lot, but it just gets mixed up, and so many characters are put into the show. So many characters are kicked out of the show, and ultimately, I think only 3 arcs are completed, if that. So that's the end of this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry that this video was mostly a rant, but you can send all your complaints to netflix@gmail.com. I'm going to try and make the next few videos Halloween based, but I'm obviously going to review that new Star Wars Vision show and What If when it finally finishes. And yeah, thanks once again, and I'll catch you in the next one.